So it was my birthday and I decided to make this Transformer jumpsuit that looks like a gown from the back. Yeah, the photographer didn't get any good professional picture of the front of this dress. I didn't like the pictures of the front of the dress, which is why I am adding this clip now. I really wanted to cry, but the back was a very huge consolation. So you guys, in this video I'm going to be showing you how I achieved this look. This video is going to be kind of detailed, so if you are interested in this, just sit back, relax, learn and enjoy. So for this outfit, I used about 6 yards of satin, shining face satin. If you are bigger than me, you may need 7 yards, and if you're a plus size, you may need about 8 yards. But the least that should be used for this outfit should be 6 yards of satin. Then I used some corset cups, I used some appliques, I used thread, I got a roll of bias, and if there's any other thing that is needed in this outfit, we're going to be seeing it in the course of this video. So first of all, I started with cutting of the trouser and I used pattern paper for the first time. Like, I used pattern paper to make a tutorial for the first time. Yeah, I had to use pattern paper because of this tutorial. So here's how I cut my female trousers. In this video, I'm going to give a detailed way of cutting a female trouser. So from the waist to the hip, I usually take about 8.5 or 9 inches depending on the size of the hip. So I don't really have big hips, so I take 8.5. Then from the hip to the thigh, for someone like me who is slim, 2 inches is enough. But someone who has big hips or big bum bum, you may need to take 2.5 or 3 inches. So I'm marking the point both left and right so I can join it together. I was not with my ruler, I couldn't find my ruler on this day, so I used my tape to rule the lines. Yeah, so that's the line I'm ruling right now. I'm joining the waist, I'm joining the hip lengths together, and I'm going to be joining the thigh lengths together. So now, trouser is something really technical, so I don't use approximations for the knee length and the calf length, that's the ankle. I don't use approximations. I measure the real thing. So from my waist to my knee is 24 inches. For some people it's 25, for some people it's 23, for some people it can even be 21, and for some people it can be more. So it is essential that you take that measurement. And at the knee too, you are going to have to measure the knee round to get the exact measurement of the knee round at that point where you measure the knee length. Then after marking the knee, I also marked the calf. So here's something I do differently with my trousers. Since it's female trousers, yeah, and females usually have curves, I usually subtract about 1.5 inches from the upper part of the waist. Then I subtract about 1 inch from the knee. I subtract 1 inch from the calf too, like I'm showing you now, marking 1 inch from all of them. Then when I'm done, I'm going to use my tape to connect. You are not going to be removing anything from the hip or from the thigh. You connect from the waist to the hip, then from the hip you connect down to the knee, and from the knee you connect down to the calf. At the end of all the cutting, we're going to be cutting out that part, and we'll be taking our measurements from the parts where we marked. You'll see what I mean in this video. So it's time for the measurements. My waist is 28, so I'm going to be marking 7 from that place where I marked. Can you see? I didn't start from the beginning of the pattern. I started from where I marked. So I marked 7 inches and I gave it 1 inch sewing allowance. For the hip, I marked the exact measurement, and for the hip, I added only half an inch. I didn't add 1 inch. Yeah, so for the thigh, I measured from the points where the line is. My thigh is about how many? About 25. So I marked about 12.5 inches, and from that 12.5 I added 1 inch. So for the waist, you're adding 1 inch sewing allowance. For the hip, half an inch, and for the thigh, 1 inch. Then for the knee, and then I need to note something. Since my thigh is 25. I divided my thigh into 2. I didn't divide it into 4. For your waist and hip, you're going to be dividing into 4. But for your thigh, your knee, and your calf, you are dividing into 2. The reason is that you are measuring only one of your thighs. You are not measuring your 2 thighs. You are measuring only one knee and not your 2 knees. But for the waist, you are taking your measurements round your whole circumference. So that is why the waist is divided by 4, and the thigh and the knee and the calf are divided by 2. I hope you understand what I mean. Yeah, so I've taken all the measurements, and by the time I'm done with all the measurements, I'm going to be connecting in this way. So at this point, I cut out the pattern I already drafted. Yeah, so after cutting the right, I cut the left. Now you guys can fully understand what I mean by marking all those points. I cut out this part so that the trouser will kind of like have a curve at the side, and when we are done with the front, we're going to be cutting the back of the trouser, because the back of the trouser is totally different from the front. So for the back of my trouser, I just place the front on top of the pattern, on top of the cloth, and I add 3 inches all through on the other side, the side that has the crotch, not the curved side. The curved side is the same measurement, but on the part that has the crotch, I add 3 inches all around, and I cut it out too. And that is basically all for cutting the trouser. Remember to cut the other side, like that curved part. Remember to cut it out too. Remember not to leave it straight. So when you are done, you are going to be placing the pattern paper on the fabric, and you cut it out. Here's the front of the fabric. You do the same thing for the back, and that will be all. So the next thing I did was to cut the upper part of the jumpsuit, and the upper part is a corset. So for the front of the corset, I won't be including it in this video because it's going to make the video really bulky. Yeah, I'm just going to be like giving a detailed tutorial on the back. That's the part that has the tie at the back, because I feel most people know how to make corsets. But if there's anybody here that still needs my corset pattern, please identify in the comment section and I will make a video that includes the corset. So for the back, I just placed the front on the pattern paper, and I kind of used the front to draft out the back. I just drew a box like the one you are seeing me draw now. I just drew it round, and I took off the fronts. And here's the trick. Here's how you get the space for the tie at the back. So you know, normally the back of clothes usually have zip allowance. Some people put 1 inch, 1.5, 2 inches, but in this case there is no zip allowance. As you can see, I placed the front on top of the pattern and drew out the exact measurement of the front. So now here's what we're going to do. After drawing out this square, I marked about 2 inches or 2.5 inches, actually 2.5, because I wanted the back to be kind of open. But if you don't want it to be too open, 2 inches is enough. If you want it very open, you can do 3 inches, you can do 4 inches, depending on what it is you want. So after doing that, I drew the 2 inches line straight, and I picked up my scissors and I cut out the square. I cut everything out. Yes, so after cutting it round, here's what you are going to do. That part where you marked 2 inches, you are going to cut it off. Do you get? There's no zip allowance, and on top of the fact that there's no zip allowance, you still cut out 2 inches. And when you are cutting the back, it's going to be on fold, so when it's open, it's like 4 inches that is open, and if it's 2.5, it's like 5 inches that are open. But by the time you tie it, it will be less, because when you tie it, it's going to give you a kind of fitting, so it will even be less than your measurement. It will be less. So I would advise nothing less than 2 inches and above if you want to have that tie thing at the back. And then you notch the upper part, so you know the place that is upper part, and you use the pattern paper to cut out both the front and the back. You can see the difference between the two now. You can see the 2 inches I cut out. Yeah, so now I placed the cloth, the pattern on top of the fabric, and I cut it out. So now it's time for sewing the trouser parts. So you're going to pick up one front and one back. You place the both of them together, and you sew from the curved part first. You mark 1 inch, you give 1 inch sewing allowance, so you sew from the curved part and you sew it straight down with 1 inch allowance. Then after that, you turn to the other side and you sew from the lower parts of the other side, yeah, with 1 inch sewing allowance all through. So at this point, I was done joining the left and the right. So here is how I joined the both of them together to form a trouser. I turn the left to the back. Yes, the left side, the side that has the small side at the front, the left side to the back. Then I leave the right side on the right side, like I don't turn it to the back. Then I put that right side into the left side that I have turned to the back. Let me repeat myself. I turn the left to the back side, like I turn it to the wrong side, but I leave the right of the trouser like that, and then I put it into the left one. And when I am done, I use 1 inch to sew round. Yeah, you sew it round, and when you're done sewing it, it's just like magic. When you're done sewing it, just bring it out. Your trouser is ready. It's remaining the dart and all of that. So for the dart of my trouser, I usually measure about 4.5 inches. Yes, 4.5 from the middle. I measure it and I take it down by 5 on both sides. And when I measure the 4.5, I hold the dart with 1 inch, so that altogether it's going to be 2 inches on both sides. Like, I know that is huge. The dart I hold for my trousers is huge, but I just always love my trousers to have serious fitting, so I always mark 4.5 instead of 4, and I take in 1 inch and 5 inches from the upper parts. I don't know if you get 4.5 horizontally and 5 inches vertically. Yeah, that's a better way to explain it. I draw my dart and voila, my trouser is ready. Yeah. So let's go back to the back of the corsets. Yeah, one last thing I forgot. You have to fold the lower part of the trouser, so you fold it carefully 2 times, or if you can't fold it carefully 2 times, you weave it, that's you hem it, and you fold it once. That's a trick. If you find it hard to fold 2 times, just weave it and fold it once, and everything will be perfect. Here's the front of the corset before I put the appliques and turned it with the lining. Yeah, so back to the back of the corset. Like, it's been long coming. I've been saying it and I've still not shown it, so let me just show you what it takes to make it. So first of all, I actually just discovered that I lost that part of the clip where I made the back for the pink one. So I will just use, fortunately for me, I made the same type of back for another cloth, though it's a white cloth, so I can actually use it to explain what I did at the back of the pink cloth. So this is why you need one roll of bias. You need a lot of bias, and this is what I used to get the rope at the back of my clothes that have ties. I just save myself the stress of folding the material. I get a bias that is the same color with the outfits, and I bring out the bias and I fold it into two, just like I am doing in this video, and I sew it down. I sew about 3 to 4 yards. To be on a safer side, just sew about 4 yards, so it will be enough for creating the channels for the tie and also for the rope itself. So now I'll be cutting 2 inches out, 2 inches each. I will cut about 18 to 20 because you need like a whole lot on each line. So when I'm done with cutting about 18 to 20, then I'm going to start sewing them on top of the material. So here's what you do. You fold it into two, just follow everything I'm doing on this video. I know this fabric is white, so it may not be so clear. Then you place it at about 0.5 inches. Don't place it at the beginning of the material because you're still going to turn the material with lining. So you place it on about 0.5 inches, and so then you pick up another one and place it at, maybe you just give it 0.5 distance from the first one, or 1 inch, depending on what you want, and you do it like that. You keep on adding more, you keep on creating more channels for the rope until you get to, you leave about 1 inch at the end. Yes, don't sew it to the end because you're still going to have to add the upper part to the lower part of the cloth, except the cloth is already turned with lining and it doesn't have a lower part. Then that way you can now sew and leave only 0.5 inch, but the best thing to leave is 1 inch, so that after sewing there can be little space and your work is not going to be tacky. So the next thing to do is to create a channel for your boning. If you have any boning that if you want to put boning at the back of the cloth, you create the channel for the boning at this point. But on this day I was so tired, I forgot to create the channel for the boning. It was after I turned it with lining that I remembered, and I eventually did it. I eventually created the channel, but I'm just saying this so that you don't make the mistake. You should create the channel for the boning before you turn with the lining. As you can see, I'm turning with the lining, and when I'm turning with the lining, I'm going to be sewing at exactly the line where I sewed the small bias on the back of the cloth. So by the time I turn it, it's going to be so neat and nobody will know how I was able to create the channels on the cloth. You're going to be seeing it right now. So here is how the back looks after I have joined the two of them together to the front. You can see how the tie is, and you can see how the channels look so perfect. So you guys, please ignore the fringe at the front of this cloth. I was just trying to check out something. I was trying to try out something, so I just put the fringes, but at the end of the day I just removed it. I just used pin to pin it to the cloth. So you guys, I was attaching the sleeve at this point, and this sleeve is really long, like it's complex. So I've decided that if I see so many people who indicate interest in knowing how I fixed the sleeve on the cloth or how I achieved the sleeve, I'm going to make a video about it available. So if you need to know how I achieved this sleeve, please let me know in the comment section. But anyways, you guys, after everything, I attached the upper part of the jumpsuit because I added the sleeve first before adding it to the trouser part, because when I've made the trouser, it will be kind of complex for me to do everything. I always prefer finishing everything at the top and finishing everything at the lower part and joining the two of them together. So for the trouser, I turned the top of the trouser with bias so that it won't be rough, since I didn't line it. And after that, after making the cloth, I still went ahead to weave it, but I joined the upper part to the lower part, and my jumpsuit was ready. For the attachment is like a mini skirt, like a half skirt. Like if you look at it, you see that is a gather skirt, but I just made it halfway. I made the band full, the measurement of my full waist, but I made the material itself just half. That was how I got the attachment, and that is how we got this beautiful dress. Yeah, the attachment is detachable. You can use pressing button, you can use normal button, you can use zips, you can make it tie, and you can just use an office pin if it's an outfit that you want to use once. Like me, I just used an office pin because I don't have an intention of using the attachment again. So that's just it for this video. So you guys, this will bring us to the end of this video. If you enjoyed this video or you learned a thing or two, do give this video a huge thumbs up, subscribe to my YouTube channel, share this video. Let's move this ministry to the permanent site in Watergo. Leave a kind comment, tell me what you think about this outfit, and hopefully I'm going to be seeing you in the next one. For now, bye, kiss, love you.